Good afternoon, everybody. Will DuPree here in the KXAN live studio. For only the third time in our country's history, the House of Representatives has voted to impeach a president of the United States. Of course, you may have seen that marathon hearing yesterday where all the different representatives were giving speeches on either side of the issue before taking that ultimate vote on those two articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. Today, we really wanted to look in to see how the Texas House delegation voted on these two articles. And for that discussion, we have political reporter with KXAN, Phil Prazan, joining me here in the studio. Phil, good afternoon.
Hey, Will.
Yeah. Looking at all the vote counts, of course, these two articles came down to basically party line votes. But here in Texas, tell us what you found out about that.
Well, I mean, the big picture, the big takeaway is everybody voted how we thought they were going to vote. There were a couple wobblers that we were watching. But at the end of the day, when push came to shove, and I don't know how much shoving there was on each of the party whips side, but everybody did get in line. There were Democrats voted as the Democratic caucus wanted them to vote. The Republicans voted as how the Republican caucus wanted to vote as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were looking at some of these very tight races, both for the Democrats and Republicans here in Texas. Politics look a little bit different for next year. Did that have any effect on how people voted yesterday? It doesn't look like it.
It doesn't, but it does put them, a lot of people, in a tough spot. It depends. This is such a permanent record vote. That's what is so important about record votes, is it gets politicians on the record for and against something, and that something, whatever that is, in this case it's President Trump, could come up and bite them in the butt, in their election, right? So there were really a couple ones who were on the hot seat, right? You have Representative Colin Allred from North Texas, and I have his stats right here. I mean, so he won that district 52% to 45% against the Republicans. So
very close.
It was very close. That was one of the Democratic pickups now. So if that wave goes the other way, this impeachment vote will be held against him big time. Same with the other Democratic pickup in the Houston area, Lizzie Fletcher. And she was really, a lot of people were watching to see what she was going to do, because she's part of those kind of western Houston suburbs where historically they've been Republican. They're changing now, but she just won 52.5% to 47.5% against John Culberson last time. So that's a close race. There were the other one on the Democratic side, which we were watching big time, was the incumbent Democrat Henry Cuellar from South Texas.
Right. People were really speculating whether he was going to fall on the against issue, because he's really kind of out of step with some of the mainstream Democrats.
Yes, I mean he does go across party lines a lot. He used to be the Texas Secretary of State under Republican leadership, and then he has really worked with Republicans a lot. So much so that he actually has a primary challenge. One of his former interns is running against him.
Wow.
And has the endorsement of Elizabeth Warren. So like that progressive wing of the party this will be a test about how big that progressive wing of the party is in South Texas. But Representative Cuellar has been around for a long time. He has been reelected again and again. So we will see how that dynamic plays out. But even he ended up voting to impeach President Donald Trump. And when reporters asked him afterwards why, he just said facts. And so
left it right there.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you were looking at the video that we have right here, this is during the votes that happened. And just a moment ago, you could see Nancy Pelosi kind of scolding in a way her delegation for cheering after the first article of impeachment was approved. I've seen many a meme now today related to that very moment there.
Gosh, wasn't that just like a don't you dare kind of moment, like a school teacher telling the student in the back to stop talking so much.
Yeah.
No, I mean, because she wore black. She took this as a very serious issue. She does not want it to look like there is any joy from the Democratic side in doing this, because for those swing voters, they don't want that is not a good look for swing voters, right? this is a serious issue. Nobody should be celebrating this in the eyes of Nancy Pelosi.
And
Yeah.
during the vote, when it was happening, for a brief moment, there was a Republican who voted yay on one of the articles of impeachment. And I want to just show you all an article that we have on our website that we have there. The headline there says, "Glitch, briefly recorded Texas Republican voting yay for impeachment." And there he is. That is Texas Republican Representative Michael Cloud. Now, he has come out today and said, this was just an error. He was not voting yay for it. He strongly opposed these articles of impeachment. But you may have seen that come up on your screen yesterday when the votes are being cast and you saw all the tallies.
Can you imagine that just the heart stops in his office?
Yeah.
If all of his staff are going, "What did my boss just do?" Yeah, that we were wondering about that too. But I guess these things kind of happen, and
I
that's
saw
why they
that
have.
briefly last night and I was like, wait, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
who is
very
that one
interesting.
Republican that's voting to impeach? I wonder how many phone calls he got really quick.
I would imagine quite a few.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, if everyone's just joining us, I want to remind people that we're talking about the breakdown of how the House, the Texas House delegation, I should say, voted on those articles of impeachment. Was there something else you wanted to address related to that?
Yeah, I mean, we went through the Democrats. I think there's also three really important races here in Central Texas that this could have a huge impact for. I mean, and that's really our three incumbent Republicans who are in changing districts. This is in Republican Michael McCall, Republican Chip Roy, and Republican John Carter. Now they're all in the Austin area, right? They all have little skinny parts in Austin and then broaden out to other areas of Texas. John Carter up north, McCall to the east, and then Chip Roy down to San Antonio, and then over to the west. And they were really close last time. So McCall won 51.1%. Chip Roy 50.2%. Again, so a difference. He beat the Democratic opponent Joseph Kopser by just under 10,000 votes, and then John Carter 50.6%. I mean, so we saw last time that just a huge Democratic bomb go off in Austin, and it really ate into the leads of those three districts. And so if impeachment is an issue that drives out people in Austin, and that is going to be challenging to overcome for those three Republicans. They're going to have to get more rural voters, or at least tamper down some of the Democratic vote in Austin, the urban areas.
Well, speaking of the 2020 election, and moving off to a kind of a different topic here. A lot of candidates are announcing their runs for these different races, some of them for re-election, some for challenging incumbents, and they're all raising money at the moment. One particular race, Phil, that we have kept a close watch on is one in Williamson County. Tell us about this and also how a fundraiser is kind of playing into that.
Well, yeah, and we have Representative Tallarico from District 52 up in Round Rock, Taylor area on the phone. Thanks for joining us, Rep.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And just so everybody knows out there, you are somewhat in one of those changing districts, right? You are your district overlaps John Carter's district on the congressional level. So it's been Republican for years and years and years, and you were the first one into over the finish line as a Democrat in a long time. So I guess just talk to me first about what that experience is like.
Yeah, I represent Southeast Williamson County, so the cities of Round Rock, Hutto, Taylor, Georgetown, and Copeland. And I grew up in this area. I was actually born at Round Rock Hospital in my district. The lines have, of course, changed as the population has grown and as redistricting has taken its toll. But no Democrat has won my district in its current lines since before I was in kindergarten. So it's been quite a while. And I think there are a couple things happening. One is changing population as Austin has grown and as Austin has become more unaffordable. A lot of working class, middle class folks have moved into Williamson County looking for affordable housing and cheap homes and good schools and safe neighborhoods. But also the folks who have lived in Williamson County for a long time are really starting to change their political alignments. They see what's happening in D.C. with the extreme partisanship and division. They see leadership that lacks character and decency. And so those folks are looking for candidates who can put people over politics. And I think that's why they supported me in the last election. And I hope we made them proud in our first session this year.
I guess is impeachment a big issue in your district?
I don't know if impeachment itself is, but I know and I hear, I knock on thousands of doors, every year in my district. I knocked on 5,000 in my first campaign, and I've already been knocking on doors this year. So I talk to voters face to face, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, and across the political spectrum, people are worried that we have a leader in the White House who is not someone that we can tell our children to emulate. Mm-hmm. We tell our kids not to bully. We tell our kids not to lie. We tell our kids not to be selfish. And yet we have a president of the United States who does all three things every hour of every day. And so I think, regardless of your political persuasion, I think we can all agree that we want a president who exemplifies compassion and decency and responsibility. A lot of folks in my district voted for Mitt Romney in the 2012 presidential campaign. A lot of my constituents voted for President Obama. No matter your politics, I think we can agree that both of those leaders, Senator Romney and President Obama, are men of character. And I would give anything, even though I'm a Democrat, I would give anything to have Mitt Romney in the White House right now.
Dang, and so I received an interesting email from you the other day about Adam Lowy, who's a well-known lawyer here in town. You sent out a fundraising email saying that Adam Lowy will match up to $10,000 of any campaign contribution. And I also see this on Twitter. We're showing it now. Local philanthropist Adam Lowy just announced he's matching every donation to our campaign up to $10,000 before the December 31st fundraising deadline. How'd that happen? What's the backstory there?
Yeah, so Adam and I are good friends. I'm an educator by training, not a lawyer. So Adam and I actually know each other through his philanthropic work. He has helped pay for school supplies in Round Rock ISD and Hutto ISD for teachers who need classroom improvements. He has paid for those out of his own pocket. He's also been a generous supporter of the animal shelter in Austin, also recovery centers for folks who struggle with substance abuse, literacy programs, really important causes that I really care about. So that's how we got to know each other. And he supported our first campaign. He and I stayed in touch throughout the first session. He was very impressed with the work that our team was able to do during the first legislative session earlier this year on school finance, when we fixed a deeply broken school finance system and provided $11.6 billion in new funding for public education in Texas, and provided pay increases for every teacher in the state. He was so motivated by that work that he feels strongly about sending me back to the Capitol next session. So he volunteered to help us motivate new donors and mobilize grassroots donors to give before the deadline. These matches are helpful because they inspire folks who can only give $5 or $10 or $25 to give before the big deadline at the end of the year. And so that's how he volunteered to help, and it's been enormously helpful just in the past 24 hours since we announced the match.
Really? So it does work. I mean, this encourages non-donors to give. I mean, not just to you, but to any candidate. Whenever there's a matching donor who puts up a lot of money, you see results.
Yeah, I think it's because so many grassroots donors who can only give $5 or $10 or $25 feel that their donation doesn't make a big difference. They are very mistaken. Enough grassroots donors can really power an entire campaign, and so these matches, I think, are helpful reminders that their donations are just as important as someone like Adam Lowy, who can give $10,000 in a check. Most people can't do that, yet their donation, their voice, still matters in our campaign. And we pledged in our first campaign not to take corporate PAC money and not to take money from corporate PACs. We have kept that pledge. during our first session. We're keeping that pledge in our reelection campaign, and so we rely on regular people to give whatever they can, whether it's $5 or $5,000.
And you were telling me that running a campaign in a district your size in a competitive district can get up to, you said, $500,000?
Yes, that's correct. This district is a swing district, meaning it can go either way. President Trump won this district by 1.5 points in the 2016 election. I won this district by 3.5 points in the 2018 election. Obviously, President Trump and I are not in the same political party, so that shows that this district can really go either way, and the folks in my district vote based on the person, not the party. And so in that scenario, it takes a lot of money to run in a competitive swing district, and so we spent about half $500,000 in the 2018 election. We anticipate we'll need to spend at least that much in the 2020 election to hold on to this seat.
Does connecting yourself to somebody like this, when a $10,000 connection, what is the thinking about that when it comes to, well, what if Adam Lowy gets a DUI, or what if he tweets something stupid? I mean, does this somewhat make you defend what he does, or at least in politics, a lot of it is how it looks more than how it is. But is there any worry about that whenever you connect yourself to somebody like this?
Yeah, we always try to make sure we are associating ourselves with folks that we can be proud of. Adam Lowy and his wife have done incredible things for our community. I'm extraordinarily proud to be their friend and to have their support. Our biggest donor in the 2018 campaign was Charles Butt, the CEO of HEB, and as everyone who is watching your program right now knows, HEB has done an enormous amount for our community, and Charles Butt has done an enormous amount for education in Texas. So I'm very proud to associate myself with these philanthropists and these leaders, and I think the voters in my district would much rather me associate with these individuals who do so much for our area, as opposed to giant corporations who are buying politicians for their own advancement in the legislative process.
Will, you got any questions?
I do. First of all, if you're just joining us, we have State Representative James Tallarico of Williamson County joining us on the phone here. Phil Prazan, our political reporter, has been talking to him. But James, I want to say to you, whenever I moved here, I was covering Williamson County as a beat. So I was very ingrained in that community. And a lot of people told me how conservative Williamson County was. So it was a surprise to see some of the Democratic candidates unseat the Republican incumbents and some of the other challengers last year. Do you think that what do you think next year is going to turn out? Do you feel like that momentum can continue, given how competitive and divisive this election might be next year?
And it's because you do have a target on your back. That Republican Party was in here saying that they're going to gun for your district back.
That is right.
Yeah, I honestly think the character of Williamson County hasn't changed that much since you covered it, Will. It's still a small C conservative community. And I think the Republican Party no longer speaks to small C conservative values. There's nothing conservative about bankrupting our public education system. There's nothing conservative about letting our climate change dramatically and endangering God's creation. There's nothing conservative about a president who sells out his country for his own personal political gain. So these old-fashioned values, folks now find those in the Texas Democratic Party. And a great example of that is the issue of local control. The Republican Party of old once championed local control and letting local communities make decisions for themselves. But now, as we saw in the last legislative session, the Texas Republican Party, which has lost its way, has now started to persecute local communities and hand down mandates from the state capitol in Austin that handcuff county commissioners and mayors and city council people from making decisions that are best fit for their own local context. And I fought back against those measures, and I believe we have local control of this state for a reason. We have to protect our local community's ability to make decisions for themselves and for local voters to determine their own destinies. So again, these are issues and values that maybe once were exemplified by the Republican Party, but are no longer. And I believe now that the Texas Democratic Party and candidates like me and others around the state are speaking to those values more effectively and more authentically than any Republican candidate.
Representative, when you say it's a conservative small C county, some of those, voters in District 52 might turn on the TV and see in the debate that's going to be on tonight that their Democratic Party is going to be talking about not conservative things, as in, requiring everybody to do Medicare for all and getting rid of private insurance, or our fellow Texan Beto O'Rourke kind of had a lot of blowback over the gun confiscation issue, free college for all. Do you worry that people's opinions of the National Democratic Party could filter down to you and say, he believes the same thing as Elizabeth Warren, et cetera, et cetera? Or do you have to do any work to kind of separate yourself from the pack?
I think most folks know that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose, right? So the Democratic primary, when candidates are staking out an ideal, version of society, a bold and lofty policy goal, that I think, if you had them alone in a room, you could probably get them to admit that these grand proposals will not become reality, just given the political context within that we work within. But I will say that the leading Democratic candidate for president since the beginning of this primary until today is Vice President Joe Biden, who is not advocating for Medicare for all. He's advocating for a robust public option that folks can choose between that and their private insurance option. And he's articulated a vision where he trusts the American people to make their own healthcare decisions, but he believes that there's a role for the government to play in that system, just like anybody who's on Medicare currently will agree. And so, I think these things will get sorted out in the campaign and in the primary. But I think these values are going to resonate with folks across the political spectrum, whether it's Democrats in the primary, independent voters, or even some moderate Republicans who really felt like their party has left them behind.
Awesome. Representative Tallarico, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, this was great. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all.
Yeah, we'll bug you again.
Okay, sounds good. Bye.
All right, again, that was State Representative James Tallarico of Williamson County joining us on the phone, talking to our political reporter, Phil Prazan, who's joining me in the KXAN live studio. Phil, anything to wrap up before we end our live stream here?
I mean, there's going to be a debate tonight, the Democratic primary.
It never ends.
It never ends.
Yeah.
And I got an email from the DNC about how they're having 4 more debates in January, February.
Correct. Yeah.
It does raise the question of are there too many debates going on, and will people still tune in, or are they going to just get bored and not get anything, any use out of it? Because it does seem like it just keeps going and going and going, and we're not even in 2020 yet. Remember that?
Not even yet.
I
No.
know. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I watch all this stuff, and this is
Correct,
what I
me
do
too.
for fun. But for Joe, Jane, Texan out there, I don't know how much is sinking in.
And one person who will not be on the debate stage tonight is Texas's very own Julian Castro.
Yeah, and he's been very critical of the process, and a lot of people have been kind of coming to his side, and it brings up a larger point about how he's been very critical about how there is so much emphasis placed on the early states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, and then you get Super Tuesday, where the big states of Texas and California vote. He's raising issues that I think have been kind of bubbling around the Democratic Party for a long time, because if the Democratic Party wants to pitch itself as the diverse party, with people of color, the party for Hispanic Texans and the party for African Americans, there aren't that many people of color in Iowa, in New Hampshire. And I think that the more diverse candidates are just kind of getting frustrated with that. Especially now on this debate stage tonight, there's only going to be one person of color on the stage, and that's Andrew Yang. Cory Booker didn't make it. Tulsi Gabbard didn't make it. Julian Castro didn't make it. And so, I think there are a lot of these big state Democrats who are just like, why are we still spending so much time in Iowa? And I think that actually is going to change in the future. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but the big states might gang up on the little states and say, nah, that ain't going to happen in 2024.
I think Iowa likes keeping its First in the Nation caucus
Totally.
designation, of course, because, it brings a lot of attention to the state, not only from the media, from candidates and the like. I did see today that Julian Castro released a specific campaign ad running in Iowa saying, you all should not be the first contest in the state. Yeah, so if you are on Twitter, go check that out. I saw that today.
Please send that to me, because that would be
it's quite brazen.
Yeah. Well, and it's a I worked in Iowa for 2 years.
That's right.
I grew up in Nebraska, which is, in Omaha, Nebraska, right next door. You cross the river and you're in Council Bluffs.
Right.
And Iowans are viciously defensive about the Iowa caucus. These campaigns spend so much money in that state.
Yeah.
So if they didn't have that every couple of years, like, what does that do to the economy? What does that do to the the attention? We already get kind of brushed over with the flyover state reputation, but like if these candidates didn't have to go there, I don't know if they would a lot of times.
That's true. And the results for that race are going to winnow down the field more than likely, because some candidates are banking on their success in Iowa to keep going.
Totally. Think historically, Iowa is the launch pad. So Senator Ted Cruz won Iowa, and he was one Donald Trump away from being president.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Senator Ted Cruz was somewhat built for his campaign was really built for Iowa. But remember, that kept his momentum going all the way through the convention. That's the same thing as what really launched former President Barack Obama. All the way back to Jimmy Carter. Right? It's just like it is the launch pad to say this is a real candidate. The problem, though, is I just don't know how, representative Iowa is to the National Democratic Party anymore.
Yeah.
And that fight's been going on for the last couple of years, and it's not going to end.
Well, that conversation will continue for many years likely to come in the months ahead. And of course, Phil, you will be covering all of it. With Texas's primary coming up on March 3rd, we had both a Democrat and a Republican come to join us here from the state to talk about all the candidates running and how they're preparing for those primaries. So, of course, we will be watching them.
Yeah, and we need to bug more of these representatives over the phone.
Get them on the phone, too. All right, Phil, thank you for joining us and having this conversation and bringing in Representative Tallarico there. And for all of you joining us as well, we appreciate that here on KXAN Live. You can, of course, catch us on Facebook, KXAN.com, and the KXAN News app. We will always be there. Have a good rest of the evening, and we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.